that when we watch the mainstream media, certainly in England and I'm sure in the United States, you get this sort of vague notion that NATO is some sort of United Colours of Benetton, save the world, children's charity almost. NATO's war in Afghanistan produced 5.3 million refugees. That was a quarter of the Afghan population. It left 72% of the Afghan population in poverty and rendered Afghans statistically the saddest people in the world. We know that after NATO's humiliating exit from Afghanistan, the US government spitefully decided to freeze $9.5 billion worth of assets in the Afghan central bank. That would lead to 97% poverty rate in the last year or so. Before the US invasion, we know that opium production in Afghanistan was almost zero. Following the occupation, over 90% of the world's heroin came from Afghanistan. And funnily enough, the Helmand province was the center of opium production during the NATO occupation. And it just so happened that the British military had 10,000 soldiers on 140 bases in the Helmand province at the same time. What else is the NATO legacy in Afghanistan? Well, a company by the name of DynCorp. Many of us, the interesting thing about the way the US is able to outsource what it does is it obscures some of its most ugly and heinous crimes in the anonymity of obscurely named vague companies like DynCorp. It was one of them. It was a security company which actually enjoyed on its parent board, Veritas, the Secretary of State in the Bush administration, Richard Armitage. Well, DynCorp was revealed by WikiLeaks to have had workers in Kabul hiring child sex slaves from among the Afghan population. What about Armour Group, the US security company tasked with guarding the US embassy during the NATO occupation? Its employees were found to have violated the Trafficking Victims Protection Act by visiting brothels in Kabul. And eventually all that happened was the parent company G4S paid a fine to the US government and nothing was done. That was forgotten. Of course, we've just crossed the 20-year anniversary of the invasion of Iraq, which 36 million people across 3,000 demonstrations globally protested against. The occupation in Iraq displaced 1 in 25 Iraqis and killed over 1 million people. Since then, the US has spent $32 million per hour on war. The war on terror entailed the US dropping on average 46 bombs per day for 20 years and displacing 36